What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another War Within video. Hope you're all doing very well. This one's going to be a doozy. A lot of people are talking right now about this change that Blizzard has announced, which is that they're not going to be tracking cooldowns for parties in the future. And the basic, the big thing you can take home is that they're going to be trying to get rid of weak auras. And it's kind of been the fight against weak auras that Blizzard has been having over the last several years now. And it's culminating in this proposal that they want to get rid of weak auras and then bake the functionality of weak auras into the base game. So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to give you my opinion and let me know what you guys think. This is going to be a really good conversation, I think, as well. So, yo, I really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe on the video. I got to get some coffee. Bye. First and foremost, I think this is a great idea. And I think that's a pretty controversial take. Most people, their gut reaction to this was like, no, like hell no. Get away from my weak auras, right? But let me just explain why I think this could be a good idea, okay? Number one, you know, weak auras is like, besides like details, this weak auras is like the number one add-on that probably gets used by everybody. And it essentially kind of trivializes a lot of the game, which is why Blizzard wants to remove it and bake some of the communication that weak auras is doing. They want to bake that into the base game. But they don't want to give you the entire functionality that weak auras is giving you right now, because they want you to have to use your brain a little bit. And again, I'll get into that in a second. One of the main reasons they're doing this, think about this for a second. Imagine a new player walking into World of Warcraft and being like, hey, I want to try this dungeon out. And then you try it, and then you get something wrong, and then people yell at you because they're like, what the heck? Why were you standing in that mechanic? And it's like, why didn't you take that mechanic over here? What are you doing? You're doing it wrong. Imagine you're on like the first boss of Darkflame Cleft, and you go in there and you're supposed to where's Darkflame? You're supposed to run Old Waxbeard into the pillar, and you didn't know you're supposed to run Old Waxbeard into the pillar because you don't have an add-on telling you to do it. And then you get yelled at by everybody, and it's like, oh my gosh, like these kinds of things really dissuade first-time players from getting into the game and staying into the game, because they have to download 6 add-ons that have all these packages just to be able to play the base game, especially in raids. Raids would be the big one, where you have to have a weak aura telling you where to go, telling you to go pop that bomb, telling you to walk over here, whatever the case might be. So for new players, I think that it's very intimidating trying to get into the game. And you better believe that Blizzard wants new players to get into the game, because this is a business for them. They have to make money. They have to make it attractive for new players. And I think right now, the idea of getting into the game is so intimidating for most people that they just rather not. It's just way too much stuff to have to download. We need to try and look at this from the perspective of Blizzard sometimes and just say, hey, as a company that has to be profitable, they have to get new players to enter the game. How do they do that? And are add-ons getting in the way? And they absolutely are. They absolutely are a roadblock, a wall that stops players from getting into the game. And so that's one of their big reasons for probably wanting to remove this and just bake it into the base game to make it more functional, right? Also, you know, Blizzard, I think one of the biggest ones for the players who have been here for a long time, the seasoned players, they want to make encounters that are actually challenging. And I think they want players to actually be able to use their brains to solve the problems in the encounters, not just have a weak aura trivialize everything. Imagine if you were a game dev for a second and you spent like 3 months developing like several different bosses in the current raid, okay? And then you put it out and everybody plays it, and in the Race to World Force, literally in the first 3 days of the raid going live on like the mythic version, all the fights get solved by a weak aura, a package of weak auras that come in and they just tell you exactly what to do. Put your foot here, go pop the bomb, walk over there, get knocked back, switch colors from red to blue. You know, if you're on sticks or something, get on the ball, run over the things, avoid this, avoid that, roll over this bomb. It just tells you how to play the game. And imagine if you had developed those fights and all these, what you thought were really cool mechanics that were kind of interesting, and they just get completely solved by a weak aura. That would drive me crazy. I would be mad if I was a game dev. And there's probably some guys at Blizzard right now who are pissed because they keep spending this time making these things, and they're like, how do I make a mechanic actually interesting to the player base and at the same time not have it be completely trivialized? And part of where this has moved us to is that every mechanic in every raid is a one-shot now at the mythic difficulty. If you mess up one mechanic, it's a one-shot, every one of them, because Blizzard feels kind of shoved into a corner where they make these mechanics, those mechanics get solved, so they have to up the damage on the mechanics so that you have to solve them perfectly every time, because otherwise there's literally nothing that you're doing. There's no fun. There's nothing interesting actually going on in the encounter because it's already solved. So again, they talked about this in the article. They talk about it later, but I'm just kind of summarizing it for you, that this is the main problem that Blizzard's running up against. They want to make interesting and challenging encounters again, but they can't because the weak aura is in the way and it just solves everything right away. So that is, I think, the biggest problem that they're facing that applies to like the high-end, more hardcore player base. So again, you've got the newer player experience that's kind of being ruined, and you have the hardcore player experience that, in my opinion, is being ruined because all you do is download a weak aura pack, you follow it, and you're done. You're not using your brain. And I love to use my brain while I'm playing this game. That's one of the main reasons for me personally that I love playing this game, is trying to figure out how to solve the problems that are presented in front of me. In a raid, in Mythic Plus, whatever I'm doing, how do I fix this? How do I make this better? How can we make this so that we're successful? I love doing that. And I think Blizzard wants to get back to a game where players are able to do that again. That's what they're trying to do with this whole change. They're trying to remove they're trying to like hook your brain back into the game rather than just unhooking it, which is what the weak auras do. You just turn your brain off and follow the weak aura. So those are the first two big reasons there. And I talked about the one shots, and I think Blizzard, the culmination of this really was that there was a private aura in like Yggdrasil. I think it happened before Yggdrasil too, but I remember distinctly in Dragonflight, in Yggdrasil, we were on Smolderon. I don't know if you ever did this fight, but on Smolderon, you had to they made everything in Smolderon like private auras so that weak auras couldn't track it. So then you just had to make a macro which triggered the same effect as the weak aura so that it could tell you what to do when you got the mechanic. There were 2 people in the raid that would get a mechanic that they had to deal with, but everybody had to smash their macro when the mechanic was coming out to see who got it. And again, this is the kind of thing that Blizzard is trying to move away from. They tried to fix it with the private auras, but that just made it even worse because then everybody just has to make this macro. And so, you know, even Ian, admitted that this macro was really, really stupid. And this is over here. The auras power, you can just make a separate macro that pipes the information. And now, whoops, you wipe because somebody hit the wrong macro or had a typo in their macro. And great, we've succeeded in making it even more frustrating. So they're aware that their past efforts to fix these things have all failed. So that's why they've gotten to this point where they're like, we're just going to get rid of weak auras altogether. That seems to be the only way to do it. And then they're going to try and bake in the functionality of weak auras into the game. Okay. And I think like the reason that they're doing it now, again, as I've been alluding to, is the history of where we've come from. And if you think about, I just want to take a second and just talk about how Blizzard has really actually been successful in a lot of their more recent endeavors, and they've learned from their mistakes in the past. So we had crazy amounts of borrowed power in the past, right? Legion with artifact weapons. You had BFA with Azerite armor and essences and corruptions. 3 systems, all borrowed power systems in one expansion. Then you had Shadowlands where it doubled down. You had double legendaries. You had Covenant abilities, 2 Covenant abilities. And then you had Covenant Soulbinds, which gave you talent trees. There was 3 of them. There was 4 Covenants. It's like absolutely ridiculous amounts of borrowed power. And as much as I enjoyed those expansions, I actually really did. That was like the peak of borrowed power, and Blizzard learned from that. We all said, hey, we kind of hate borrowed power now. Can we get rid of borrowed power? They said, yep, we're going to work on it. Guess what? Boom. You walk into Dragonflight and you have brand new evergreen talent tree systems that I think have been very widely successful. Were there growing pains at the beginning? Yes. Some of the talent trees were terrible for a long time. Blizzard worked on them. They made them better. It took longer than it should have to make them better. I completely agree with that, but they did make them better. And now we have these incredible evergreen talent tree systems that are better than the previous ones were by far. You can have like an outdoor world delve build. You can have a PvP build. You can have a Mythic Plus build. You can have a raid build. You can have a different build for every piece of content. That's awesome. That gives us like flexibility. It gives us choice. It makes us feel better about the game, right? That's a success story from Blizzard. That's them taking problems from the past, learning, growing, coming up with a better system and making it amazing. That's what they did there. And I feel like everybody who's reading this post from Blizzard, a lot of people are just jumping on the train of being like, well, they're never going to get it right. They're going to remove weak auras and they're going to bring in their version of it with the baseline UI, and it's going to be horrible. It's going to be terrible. It's not going to work. And I'm like, okay, it might not work perfectly right out of the gates, but they're going to keep working on it like they did with the other previous systems, and they're going to make it better to the point where it's in the place where they want it to be. They want it to be in a place, again, where players are using their brains to look at the information in front of them and solve those problems like in a raid environment. They just don't want it to be where you're just looking at a weak aura and it just tells you what to do with everything, and then the game is solved. They really do want you to get in there yourself. And I think that that's great. The reason I think that this could definitely be successful, the final reason, is because this is not coming out anytime soon, okay? They said it's coming out after. It won't be coming in patches 11.1.7 or 11.2. It won't be. Okay, that means it's not happening at the end of spring. It's not happening in the summertime. It's going to be happening potentially. We don't know the date, but it could happen sometime, let's say in the fall. Let's say like absolute bare minimum, it could be happening in like October. So you have all of June, July, August, September. We have at least 4 months for us to talk to Blizzard, for Blizzard to talk to us, for YouTubers to make videos, for it to go up on the PTR, and then we iterate on it and we look at it and we try and figure it out. That's a long time. That's a long time for Blizzard to look at this and to try and make it better and better and improve it until they actually release it in a state that is where they want it to be. And I think they're gonna be fine. They're gonna have time to do this. I know people are dooming about this, and you might say I'm coping. I don't really care what you're saying. I honestly don't care at all. I'm telling you that they're gonna get this right. It's not gonna be right away, but they're gonna get it to a place that's good, and it's better for the game. It is gonna be better for your experience in the game that you have the in-game UI telling you as much information as it needs to tell you, and then you have to use your brain to solve the rest of it. That is a more enjoyable experience than just following a weak aura to a T and literally becoming a robot. And if somebody doesn't follow the weak aura, you can yell at them because they didn't follow it. It's like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life, and I'm so tired of it. I'm tired of every single raid encounter having 5 one-shots because that's what Blizzard has to put into it to make it challenging again. They're going to get away from that now. They're going to actually be able to get to a place where they're reducing the number of swirlies and the number of kicks that are required. Do you know how many kicks are required in a dungeon? Every single dungeon, every single pack in every dungeon has multiple kicks, multiple stops that are required. My cap totem is on cooldown 24/7. My kick is on cooldown 24/7. That is an exhausting, annoying experience to play in. And I'm really excited that Blizzard is going to make this push to get rid of the weak auras, to bake everything into the game as much as they can into the base UI, and then from there they can reduce the lethality of these encounters, because the encounters are actually a little bit more complex now, and they're not just completely solved by a weak aura that's telling you what to do. The complexity is up here, and you can fix it in your brain. You can solve it that way, and then therefore the encounters don't have to be as lethal. I think this is great for the game. I am very excited about this. I am happy about this. I think this is the right direction for Blizzard to go with the game, and I think if you're terrified at the prospect of losing your weak auras, I promise you the experience of the game is more fun when you get to use your brain a little bit to solve some of the problems that are in front of you. It's very, very fun. This is kind of how I play the game already, right? This is, if you follow me for a while, you know how I play the game. I really enjoy it this way, and I really think that this is going to be great for the game. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, because I know this is controversial. A bunch of you guys are going to disagree with me. That's fine. It's okay with that. Just be careful with your comments. Don't be, too inflammatory, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about what you think. I can talk about what I think. Let's have a discussion about it. This is what Blizzard wants, by the way. They want us to talk about this. This isn't coming out for months. We have time. We have time to cook this. Blizzard has time to cook it, and we got to help them do it. Okay? Thank you guys so much for watching. I love y'all. I'll see you in the next one.